We are now turning our attention, ladies and gentlemen, to the project that's been mentioned a number of times through the day but had really no focus up to now, but we're about to change that. Please welcome our expert panel on accelerating the Aerotropolis. So if I could invite our panellists towards the stage. Here they come. Kirsten Andrews is the Chief of Staff to the Vice-Chancellor at the University of Sydney. Guy Chalkley, CEO of Endeavour Energy. Simon Hickey, the Chief Executive Officer of Western Sydney Airport. And Michael Miller from Hitachi Australia, the Managing Director. And our provocateur for this panel, the City and Economics Planning Lead at Arup, Caroline Squires.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm conscious that we're now into the afternoon session. Everyone's had their lunch. The panel and I did have a chat about whether or not we needed to do a bit of a song and dance to keep you all awake, but hopefully we've got enough interesting ideas and things to talk about to keep you on your toes. So I'll cut to the chase. We have four fabulous panellists with us here who have lots to share, and I'm really keen to hear about what they have to say about this little project that we have of accelerating the Aerotropolis and delivering on Sydney's City of the Future, the Western Parkland City. We have heard a lot about the vision and the strategy. I'm really keen to pick up on Kirsten Fishburn's buzzword for today, delivery. And Simon, I might go to you first. Western Sydney Airport is progressing rapidly to develop and operate the airport. Aside from the task of building a brand spanking new shiny airport in Western Sydney, what else is fundamentally required to realise the opportunity that this presents for Western Sydney and the growth of the Western Parkland City?
Thanks for that. It's great to be here. So from our perspective, what we need to do is ensure that we build a thriving economic centre at the airport, that we build Australia's most successful airport, and that we demonstrate that we leap forward with a new generation airport using new technology, sustainability, etc. So it's really important that we deliver on time and that we deliver a great business and a great business model. When we started this year, we said to each other at Western Sydney Airport, keep up, because this has been a year where we've been focused on delivery. By the end of this year, as the Minister said, we will have signed all of the major contracts to deliver the airport, and we are on schedule despite the persistent rainfall that we've had. And if you're moving a lot of earth around, which we have been doing, rainfall is not your friend, but we remain on schedule. It's really important that we build a thriving business. If you look at studies done around the world, for every 10% increase in air capacity, it leads to a 0.5% increase in GDP. And so GDP, translate that as jobs and opportunities for people in Western Sydney. So kids who are not born today will have more choices, more opportunities because of Western Sydney Airport and the Aerotropolis that's being developed. And I see the airport as the linchpin for what's happening around the airport. We've got to get it right because that is what is going to create everything else that's happening around it. It's really important that we're 24/7, that we reach out and now start creating that great business. So we've been talking to a lot of airlines. There's an enormous interest in the airport, both domestically and internationally. We've actually did a EOI around our cargo precinct. We're looking on day one in 2026 to bring about a 25% increase in air cargo capacity to the Sydney Basin. And over time, that will grow to nearly doubling the air cargo capacity in the Sydney Basin. So, enormous growth potential. And I can say with great confidence, we will deliver on day one more than 25%. So we will deliver in air cargo capacity. We've also we're looking for a joint venture partner, which we've announced, for the first stage of our business park precinct. We've got 200 hectares of the business park precinct. To give you an idea about that in terms of size, it's as big as the Parramatta CBD. We won't have the very tall buildings, but it's quite a big development that we've got going on there. So we're getting on with it. That will be delivered, that first stage, 13 hectares, will be delivered before we open the airport. So we're really looking at just getting on with it, delivering a great airport, a seamless customer experience, really focused on data so that we can be efficient as an airport operator, a different experience for customers and passengers, and getting on with business.
Great, this is big stuff. Michael, Hitachi has signed an MOU to participate in the development of the Aerotropolis back in 2018. I'm keen to get some thoughts from you as to what it will take to realise this vision, so that, you know, we've heard a lot about getting the kind of right structures and parameters in place through planning, but what is it that businesses like yours need to see in place before you're landing at the Aerotropolis? Pardon the pun.
No, yep, great. And I'm going to kind of take the liberty of speaking not just for Hitachi, but kind of my broader appreciation of industry need. I think everybody's excited about those large infrastructure-based projects and what they can do. Airport, the spine of the transport line with the metro, the investments that we're seeing from another number of kind of partners around that large infrastructure. I think equally though, we would say that the new training models, the investment in the university sector, are great opportunities for economic development in western part of Sydney. But if I was to kind of whack the black hat on for a second, which I think is really kind of the essence of the forum, I would say that when we start thinking about the limited amounts of capital that exist for private sector organisations to invest, when we start thinking about the necessity to be able to attract global talent, I think it's equally clear that we need to not be drinking from our own Kool-Aid here, that there are many investment destinations around the world that we are now competing with, and we need to realise that we are competing with them. There's plenty more choices than once existed. And so in context, I think there's some things that we need to do, and if I reflect on the observations made earlier today by Camilla, Tracy, Eddie, David in that panel, they talked about collaboration and co-creation, and I think we need to start to think about broadly how we can actually realise that, not just from a kind of technical and solutioneering sense, but also from with a commercial lens. How do we start to bring the best of public-private sector organisations, universities and research organisations to genuinely collaborate, to start to create things from both a solution perspective and from a commercial perspective that we can implement? And I think, to answer your question, we've got a sandpit. We don't need to wait to 2026. The sandpit is we've got vibrant communities in Parramatta, Blacktown, Liverpool, Campbelltown, Penrith, that can act as that sandpit. That we don't need to just rely entirely upon the large-scale infrastructure. We should think about the other things we're seeking to attract: electrification, decarbonisation, digital and data. There's plenty of things we can do today to incubate collectively using that ecosystem.
And do you see that, there's a lot of kind of moving parts here around, do you have any views on a structure or governance that can kind of help to put that in place? So, whether or not it's kind of that economic development strategy lens over the planning and the other initiatives that are underway from a vision and policy perspective.
I think the vision is strong, largely in respect to the application of infrastructure to build a city. I think there is less detail associated with the economic development plan than is required to ensure that you get the appropriate investment. And I think we need to work that. And frankly, that's about saying we need solid planning, we need excellent execution, we need really strong governance, but above all, it needs to be balanced with agility, because we're not as agile as I think we are, and we need to be more agile if we're going to really attract the foreign investment, the foreign talent, and frankly, the local talent that require the training programs to be able to have them be a part of this vibrant Western Sydney strategy.
So Kirsten, talking about talent, the University of Sydney is a major landholder with an established presence in the area. We're talking about building a new city, creating 200,000 smart jobs, education, innovation, the sky's the limit. How does the university sector play into this vision?
So I think the key message there is that the great point we're at is that the universities across the state, not just the University of Sydney, are at a lovely time in their history where they genuinely want to reach out. There are people who genuinely want to partner with industry and with government. And I think over the last 2 years, what we've seen from the New South Wales government in particular is a recognition for Sydney what regional towns have always known. Albo said it in his speech, if you want to generate economic activity, an airport or a university is a good way to go. They've always known that in Armidale or in Wagga or in Bathurst. But now Sydney is starting to understand what happens if you tap into all of us, and we're starting to ask ourselves, how are we better to partner with? How do we be more agile to give you the skills that you need? And I think that it's fair to say that universities probably need to be better in that space. How do we give you probably the postgrad trained staff you're going to need for these smart jobs? But once we get that done, they will create jobs for everybody down the line. I think the point is that you don't need a PhD to do all of these jobs, but you might need a PhD to create them. And so I think that universities have never been more open to suggestions on partnerships. And on Monday, we had Minister Ayres to our Camperdown campus where we were looking at, where he formally opened for us a small manufacturing hub, looking at advanced manufacturing, a major partnership there with GE, making that available to industry, that resource. So I think it's fair to say that we do have the little experimentations going on in different locations about what those kinds of partnerships look like. So I think that we need to say, what is it that we do well? I think my argument would be, and if I can speak on behalf of all my university colleagues, we have many world-class universities in New South Wales, and we are all keen to create jobs and serve the city. And I think that that hasn't necessarily always been true in terms of the focus of the institutions, but I also don't think it's always been true that the government has been expecting that of us. They're now turning that to us, and it's a key accountability, and we are very focused on that. So if there's anyone in the room who'd like to, help us, let me know. Ping me on LinkedIn. But I think that, I think you'll find all of the universities are much more open to these partnerships. But the thing is that in terms of whether it's, our particular strengths in agriculture, in logistics, in robotics, they're areas where we think we could play. We can see us creating jobs around the Aerotropolis 20 years from now, but we need to decide what we're going to focus on and then build the partnerships now so that they yield real benefit some years from now.
Guy, we've spoken about the anchor of the airport and the university. Endeavour Energy is, I suppose I'm just keen to hear from your perspective as to what the future looks like from Endeavour Energy's viewpoint, and keen to kind of push the boundary a bit in terms of this isn't a business as usual future here. If we're casting forward kind of 30 years from now, what does that look like? And as a precinct, as an airport, as an Aerotropolis?
Thanks, Caroline. I was actually going to start with a confession. So I was actually going to say that I can't believe that I agreed to sit here on day 2 of the first Ashes test as a POM in a room full of many Australians. Thank you for that.
I was going to ask what happened yesterday, guys.
But I sort of reflected on that. I'm an eternal optimist. And it's interesting on some of the timelines that people have talked about. I think you've needed many eternal optimists to get you where you are today. And we're in quite a fortunate position. We're actually in the building stage now. Probably got to stay the eternal optimist because we're going to get a few bumps to go. But I think you've got to stay there and appreciate sort of where you've come from. I've been in New South Wales. I've been in Parramatta for 21 months, and that's probably a good reflection because I'm new enough to see what's happened, and you'd be amazed how much has happened in 21 months. You know, Simon sort of talked about the airport. It's amazing how much has happened in 21 months. I used to look out onto the ferry terminal at Parramatta. I now look out to 2 40-storey towers that have been built in a pandemic through lockdown, and they're pretty much on sort of fit-out stage. So we build really good things, really great when we start. And I think sort of that's where we are at the moment. We're at the great stage because we're starting. You know, if I think about Endeavour Energy, there's probably two layers of it from an Endeavour Energy point of view. There's the traditional, and you need the traditional for the backbone for the future. So if I think of where we are from an Endeavour Energy perspective, and I think about the airport and what plays out sort of thereafter, you know, we know what we planned in terms of that feeder, that backbone feeder that runs through it, that everything can feed off of. So we're past the planning stage, we're ready to go. If I think about the 2 substations that are sort of feed off it, which is traditional, but I think they've been built differently. I think about Leppington South, and then I think about South Erskine Park. You know, Leppington South's gone from temporary to it's ready, it's used in anger. And I also then think about the South Erskine Park, because that's been built a year earlier, and I think that's what we've got to do as a business. Listen to the customer, listen to the fact that you can't be the last piece in the chain that holds it all up. You've got to get in early to actually do it. And if I think of that South Erskine Park, I think somebody mentioned it earlier, that feeds the Amazon logistics warehouse. You know, go and see it. Go and see how large that is in terms of that whole Oakdale precinct and see what's already been built. And I suppose I put my energy hat on and then I look forward, because the last comment that was made as I was sort of visiting that Amazon warehouse, they said the last thing that's going to be done is 2.5 meg of solar panels that are going to go on the roof. And when you look out of the Amazon factory, you see the Coles Logistics factory that's just completed, and they went, and that's going to get 3 meg put on the roof. And if you count the number of factories in sort of warehouses from a logistics point of view that are going into Oakdale, you've got a power station going in there. So there'll be a power station sort of running off the roofs in about 3 years' time. So that's probably our transition into what next. You know, what next is then sort of utilising the backbone, utilising the traditional, but starting to really utilise the future. Yeah, people say, I think it's 50% of solar in 2030. I think they're dreaming. If you think you're going to go from what it is already 20% and only double in 9 years, I think you're dreaming. And in that same period, you're going to get the same speed of battery take-up at the same time. So play all that work, play that out. What a great opportunity for us to build something that is very different, that's got a great legacy that I think we can look back from, you know, in sort of 20, 30 years' time maybe, and really appreciate what we built for that future community. And I might even see an Ashes win, maybe.
So what's the number one priority that we need to be doing now from your perspective to get it right for the future?
Look, it's a really hard one to answer because I don't think everybody's chasing the perfect solution, and there isn't a perfect solution. So I think you've got to build off of what you got and keep moving. You know, you can't stop. So it's one of those classic ones where you've got to have a really good eye on what the future is, but don't be over prescriptive on it, because you've got to be really flexible and agile to get there, because it's still moving. And you know, I think if you see what's gone on, as I say, in the last 20 months, you've got to be pretty proud in terms of what people have done from a business perspective, from a community perspective, because I think you can see the movement. But yeah, be curious, keep trying, be agile, you know, all those, you know, sad buzzwords that people are using at the moment, but they're very relevant because we don't know the real answer yet. Yeah.
I've just received a question from the audience. It relates to business and community, as we've just been discussing. This one's to you, Michael, I think. Does Hitachi have a plan to engage a local workforce with regard to social inclusion and Aboriginal engagement for the Aerotropolis?
Yeah, thanks very much. Look, it's core to the things that we do. So when I think about the values of the organisation, every part of the world where we play, we're playing in a connected community way. What that means for us in Western Sydney, and in fact all of the major projects that we work on, is about making sure that we don't just do things because they're required under contract or ticks in boxes. This is genuinely about driving a community of capability. So, you know, our strategy in many of the large projects we're lucky enough to be participating in is very much about direct engagement with the communities, and building long-standing capability. So how do we leave with the people that we're working with, whether that is the Aboriginal community, whether it's small and medium-sized enterprises, whether it's breaking the cycles of disadvantage and giving opportunities for people to work. We are about creating that as we grow, because we can't import enough people ourselves to be able to get the job done, and we're not interested in doing that. We're interested in being able to work effectively by leaving behind us capability that can do the next project. That's what we're about. And so we will drive those programs all the way through the major infrastructure projects that we're working on and with.
So drawing through that commentary around collaboration and between business and the community, I was keen to get the panel's views on the other bad buzzword we've heard a lot of today, collaboration, through levels of government, public and private sector, and the community working better together to harness the opportunity that this represents. Simon, I might throw to you. What do you see as the biggest opportunities for collaboration and the biggest need to realise the opportunity that this presents?
Well, I think having three levels of government is a unique opportunity for them to be all engaged, all involved, and want to create something great. I think then the community will come along, and we need industry to really understand the opportunity, and all of the universities are very focused here as well. So it's a great opportunity for us to embrace those mega trends that are occurring in the world. We've heard about sustainability, we've heard about data, we've heard about Indigenous engagement, which I think is something that's really core. We've got one of the largest Aboriginal communities in Western Sydney in Australia. We need to ensure that's core to what we do. We've got robotics that we talked about with Amazon. We can really get ahead of the curve here. We can build that workforce, and we can have sustainable opportunity, because these are mega trends, and mega trends take decades to unfold. If you think about back in the 80s, Bill Gates came to a conference in Australia and sat at a desk by himself, right? He was nobody. If you get on board with those mega trends, we can create something that is truly great and truly unique and attracts the entire world to where it should be attracted, which is right here in Western Sydney.
Kirsten?
Can I add to that?
Yes, I was going to throw to you now. I knew you had something to say.
I was going to say, I think the role that we're at the risk now at the moment of potential remaining only potential. And I think what we need to do is to look at what we are going to focus on. And I think that I think the role government can play, and probably state and federal, is to say, what are the directions, what are the priority areas? And I would say 3 to 6. What are the priorities, and allow the rest of us to adjust to that. I think government doesn't need to be the whole solution here, but if it sets a direction and sets some priorities and can play a facilitation role, I think it'll make a lot easier for the rest of us to be match made with each other and to engage in some of the longer term job generating opportunities that I think are available to us. And as I said, I think there are a lot of people who want to participate, but I think the role of government is to put all the players together and to help set the direction for us. I think we need to get onto that pretty quickly.
And Michael, any views from Hitachi and business perspective?
I love the collaboration concept. Our investment in Western Sydney is founded around the Kyoso Centre, and the Kyoso Centre is a collaborative research centre. So the essence of our being is about this stuff. But I would agree entirely with Kirsten. I think that, and in fact with Guy, essentially we need a bias for action, and we need to be in a position where we take perhaps a little bit of risk when we're starting to do these innovative things, because ultimately you want to be able to test things and fail fast. And that doesn't fit naturally with a company like Hitachi. Japanese companies don't kind of like the concept of fail fast. In fact, fast is a challenge, right? But the reality here is, if we're going to realise this potential, then we need to crack on and be adventurous. And we're in. We're here. We're about trying to make sure this thing can work and make it work with all, not just for us. It's not about us. It's about the communities we serve.
Guy, any comments before we get to close?
I think, people have talked a lot about collaboration. I think there's been a couple, it's easy, it's obvious. People have been talking about it for thousands of years. It ain't easy. You have to put a lot of work in to collaborate. You have to listen to people. You have to make the time. You have to take the time. It's the reason we always talk about it, because if you get it right, it's perfect. You get it wrong, it's a disaster. So I've always said, collaborate early, stay in it. Stay in it for the long game. Build your relationships, build your networks, because it's not easy. It's obvious, but it needs a lot of work, and I think, make the effort.
All right, so I've got a quick question before we finish off. You're not allowed to mention the word collaboration, but 5 words or less, what's the number one priority that you feel that we need to do within the next 5 years to get it right, to realise this, the delivery of the Aerotropolis? Simon, I'll go to you.
A bias to action.
Pick what we're good at.
Pick what we're good at.
I was going to say, just committed, energised, passionate people. And sinners, I'm not allowed to say collaborate, I'd say we'll work well together.
And Simon.
Michael?
Oh, Michael, sorry. It's after lunch.
I would say agility, and then I agree with Guy.
All right, well, what a great chance to hear from you all. It's been fabulous to have a chat. If everybody would like to put their hands together for the panel this afternoon. Thank you.